Hi, and welcome to Dopamine and Doubt. I'm your host, Rachel, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in ADHD and OCD. On this show, I will be speaking from both my clinical and lived experience as we explore the surprisingly common crossover of ADHD and OCD. Because when we understand which is in the driver's seat, we are better able to know what we need in that moment. Whether you're living right at the intersection of both or navigate life with one of these neurotypes, you're welcome here. As always, please take what is helpful and leave what isn't. Neurodivergence shows up differently for everyone, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever replayed a conversation for 3 days trying to figure out if you offended someone? Or spent an hour trying to remember exactly what happened because you're worried you missed something important? Or maybe you find yourself asking, but what if I just think about it one more time and then I'll be able to figure it out? If that sounds familiar, today we're talking about one of OCD's sneakiest compulsions, mental rumination. Because unlike checking a lock or washing your hands, no one can see you doing it. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it yourself. When folks get to me in my office, this is a lot of where their compulsions lie because they've learned to hide them from other folks. It's similar to the difference between hyperfocus and reassurance seeking because it's asking the question, am I engaged because this is genuinely interesting or because I'm trying to get rid of anxiety? ADHD hyperfocus is driven by interest or novelty, where OCD rumination is driven by the hope that if you think just a little longer, you'll finally feel certain. Sometimes both are present, but recognizing the anxiety-driven goal can help us spot when OCD is in control and give us more choice. So what actually is rumination? One point I think people often miss is that rumination isn't just thinking a lot. It's thinking with a goal. And usually that goal is to get certainty, solve the anxiety, prove that you're a good person, figure out the truth, and make sure nothing bad will happen. Your brain, it's trying to complete a job. But if you have OCD, the job it gives you can never be finished. Some common examples so that you can recognize how this might be showing up in your life is replaying conversations over in your mind. That's my personal favorite. Reviewing memories, mentally confessing, arguing with intrusive thoughts, trying to prove you don't secretly want something, analyzing whether you really love your partner, searching for an exact feeling, mentally checking intentions, and imagining future scenarios to prepare. Notice that none of these involve the reassurance seeking of Google or asking someone else. They all happen internally in your mind. It's really hard to stop because it can give tiny moments of relief. But then OCD immediately says, okay, but are you sure? And every cycle that we engage with teaches the brain that thinking longer is the solution. And that's why the urge ends up coming back even stronger. We're great problem solvers. I would say folks with ADHD and OCD, it's one of our superpowers. And yet, not everything is a problem that can be solved. Sometimes things are just uncertain. And so, to explain a way I teach my clients to navigate this and something that I really practice myself. It comes from an amazing book that I will put in the show notes, and it's called Overcoming Unwanted Intrusive Thoughts, a CBT-based guide to getting over frightening, obsessive, or disturbing thoughts by Sally Winston and Martin Seif. One major takeaway that has been incredibly helpful is this concept of when you're stuck in a loop, we have on the one side the fear, and that's the what if. So, what if I offended someone? We'll use that example. And then on the other side, we have the false comfort. So, this is like we've talked about before, what that beautiful friend might say of, oh, there's no way that they could be offended by that. And then the fear comes back in with, but what if they are? And the false comfort tries to make their argument, that side's argument, once again. And so that is how we get stuck and we just loop and loop and loop. Or let's do another example. You're reviewing a conversation that happened and you say to yourself, what if I said that incorrectly? And then the false comfort mentally reviews and says, oh, no, you didn't. I can remember you did it this way. And then the fear comes back with, but what if I'm not remembering it correctly? And again, we're just stuck in that loop. And so the way we get out of the loop is what's called middle path. This is a DBT concept, dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's essentially holding two truths at once. One thing I love about treating OCD is that different therapy approaches often point us in the same direction. Whether you're using ERP, ACT, or in this case, a DBT concept called middle path, they all are asking us to step out of the debate in our minds instead of trying to win it. The wording is a little different, but the goal is usually the same: changing our relationship with uncertainty rather than solving it. And so an example of middle path could be, it's possible that I misspoke. I remember it this way. It's really embracing that sweet spot between giving into a compulsion and continuing to review and desperately trying to suppress the thought itself, because thought suppression does not work, especially when we have OCD. And so it's this metaphor of dropping the mental rope, acknowledging the thoughts there, but refusing to engage in the analytical process of trying to solve it. You just kind of treat the thought like background noise, and you can use radical uncertainty. So accepting that you might never get the confirmation that you so desperately crave. We can also go back to using our acceptance and commitment therapy diffusion skills here and saying something like, I'm noticing the thought. Maybe I will never know for sure, and that's okay. Or I don't have to resolve this right now. And this helps you learn to tolerate the discomfort of uncertainty without giving in to the urge to ruminate. The final strategy to use is response prevention. This is not about stopping the thoughts. It's about stopping our participation in the cycle, because we engage with this when we think we're problem solving, but it's actually not a solvable problem. If it were, you would figure it out. And knowing the difference there is big. And so this is where people will ask me, but what if I'm actually solving a problem? And sometimes, again, you are. But the difference there is that real problem solving has an endpoint and an answer, and rumination does not. If you've reached the same conclusion 20 times or replayed over and over, and your brain still wants more review, then you're probably not in problem solving anymore. You've landed in compulsion. So recovery is not having fewer thoughts. It's needing fewer answers. You may still wonder if you offended someone, if you remembered correctly, or if your intrusive thought means something. But the difference here is that instead of spending the next 2 hours trying to solve it, you see it for what it is, a mental compulsion. You recognize what's happening. You make room for the uncertainty. And you get back to living your life. The goal here is not certainty or preventing every bad thing from happening. It's freedom. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not replace professional mental health care. If you are struggling, please reach out to a qualified mental health provider who can work with you directly. What I share here comes from my clinical experience and my own journey, but your situation is unique to you. If you are in crisis, please contact 988 or go to your nearest emergency room. Thanks for being here.